another episode of Inside Eastern Utah. We are here with two ladies today who are working on a very special thing for our community. It is about suicide prevention, and they received a grant, Four Corners did, to help our area in preventing suicides. Obviously a problem people know in this area, and now we have some resources to try and counteract that. So we are here with Melissa and Cacilia. They're going to tell us more about the grant and what it means for our community. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Tell me a bit first about how this grant came about. How did you guys find out about it and decide to write it and try and bring it to our area?
Well, so we've been partnering with the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health. Kim Myers is the coordinator for their suicide prevention efforts up at the division, and she alerted us there was an opportunity and asked if we'd be interested. So she actually wrote the grant for Carbon, Emery, and Salt Lake County.
Okay. And were there certain requirements? Did you have to have a certain amount of suicides in your area per population? What were kind of the requirements to apply for that?
I think unfortunately that's what kind of gave us a leg up on receiving the grant, is that's been kind of a very unfortunate problem in our area for quite a while. And also Salt Lake County has been experiencing high volumes of suicide as well. So I think between the two of those, it made us very competitive for it.
Yeah, so it's very unfortunate about why we need the grant, of course, but very encouraging that now we have some resources. And Cacilia, you were hired to kind of facilitate and be the backbone of the grant now that it's underway. You just got hired recently. You went off to training.
I did.
And so tell us a bit about the training and what is going to be your process from here on out.
So the training was just giving us all the information that we'll need to roll this grant out in our area. So we started with our partnership with Castle View Hospital. And I just recently met with them to try and figure out the details of getting this grant started. There's a couple of different aspects of my position specifically. I will be doing some community outreach to kind of get some screening tools in the hospital, and then also public health providers, so primary care providers and things like that. We really want suicide prevention to start with primary care, because about half of the people that do complete suicide have seen their primary care provider within the last 30 days. Wow. So we want those questions to begin with their overall health primary care provider, so that we can catch it sooner than people heading into crisis. So I will be visiting with and educating the public about that piece, and then the piece is part of my job is also going to be following up with individuals that are having suicidal thoughts or have attempted, because that follow-up piece has been shown to be instrumental in helping people feel supported and preventing suicide after. So
we call those caring contacts.
Okay,
so
great.
Doing outreaches or caring contacts.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach so that you guys can be as inclusive as possible. Let's talk a bit more about meeting with the physicians. It's going to span Carbon and Emery counties, you said. And I think that's a staggering statistic you mentioned, how many people have seen their primary care provider before they make that attempt. And I think one of the things is with providers, there's, you come in for a physical ailment, and that's obviously the focus. They're focusing on what you came in for, but there are some probably key questions they could be asking. Just a few simple questions could kind of give some insight to those thoughts that they might be having.
And just to clarify, it's not as if people are coming in and directly saying, I'm having depression or I'm having thoughts of suicide. They're usually coming in for somatic issues with their doctor. They're, for a variety of reasons, they might be ashamed or don't want to admit that they're having those thoughts. So they come in for physical health issues, and then if it's not asked, if there's not any further inquiry about it, then that is kind of what the unfortunate result can be, is a completion of a suicide.
And like you said, a lot of times they might come in and just say, I just don't feel good.
Exactly.
I just don't feel good. I don't know what it is, I just don't feel right.
Yeah.
And so like you said, there might be shame or maybe they can't even put their thoughts really into words
Yeah.
about how they're feeling, but you're going to kind of help guide those providers to go through those processes.
Yeah.
And it's important to note too that asking somebody directly if they're having suicidal thoughts or if they are thinking about killing themselves, rather than have you thought about hurting yourself? Because people can interpret that differently,
Yes.
and they might not know how to, well, that doesn't equate in my mind to I am thinking about taking my own life. So we really want people to start feeling comfortable having those conversations and knowing that talking about suicide does not mean that people are going to complete suicide more.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think
So,
that has been kind of maybe a myth that people have believed. Asking that outright, they think it might encourage or put thoughts in their head that would help them in that. And I think that has been proven to not be true statistically. And so having those very clear conversations are going to be very important.
Yeah, yeah. Being very open with that is extremely important, not just with suicide prevention, with all major health issues like drug use and teenage pregnancy and all those things. If the more you talk about it, the less likely that it will occur, not the opposite, which is what most people believe.
Yes, well, sweeping something under the rug rarely helps solve an issue.
Yeah.
So this grant is going to be for 3 years, is that correct?
Yep.
So what do those 3 years look like? Obviously a lot of time with providers, but what is your time going to be spent doing, Cacilia?
So I will be starting in the hospital and getting us some really clear, clean processes of how individuals are going to get connected with me. And I should mention that the hospital, they do have screening tools already, but we do want to kind of shift them to be asking those more direct questions. So this first little bit, maybe the first 6 months, is going to be really kind of getting those processes set in place, and then having individuals start connecting with me and getting those follow-up resources set in place, and then branching out to primary care providers and things like that, and just getting that education out there in the community.
Yeah, and also one of the things that we've been lacking in our areas is resources for this kind of thing, and so we know that there's a lot of folks that are unemployed or don't have insurance out here, and so I think another challenge of the hospital and the doctors have been that someone comes to see them and they don't have insurance, they don't really know what to do. They don't know where to refer them. And this grant will allow folks that are even unfunded to get services and get help.
Oh, great.
And they don't have to just come to Four Corners. That's a really important point that I think I'd like everyone in the community to know, that Cacilia is not necessarily feeding people into our system. If that's the most appropriate place for them, then that's where, she'll try to encourage them to go. However, if they have private insurance, we're going to try and get you, hooked up with a private provider that's on your insurance panel or something like that. Or if you have no funding, we'll try and see what we can do for you there.
Because this is really a community-wide approach. It's not a Four Corners approach. It's not a hospital approach. It's not just a provider approach. It's very multifaceted.
It's
in
a
that way.
partnership with all of these entities to help our problem that we have in our community and improve people's lives all the way around. So
It's fantastic.
it's all encompassing.
So these follow-ups that you will be having with people, they're mostly, like you mentioned, to kind of find what their next step is. What it's not necessarily they're going to be meeting with you every week for you to help them. It's you finding the appropriate avenue for them.
Yes.
And just honestly, just letting them know that somebody cares, that there's somebody that cares about them. I mean, a part of this grant and a really important piece, like a follow-up piece that was told to us in the training, was a postcard in the mail was so beneficial to people feeling good and feeling like somebody cared about them. And that's the simplest, cheapest,
just
caring
a handwritten
contact.
effort.
Exactly. So these little tiny things that seem so simple make the world of difference to some people. So
Of course.
just starting to put those in place and getting those out there, because that could make a difference in someone's life.
Of course.
And I think also that a lot of people don't know where to start if they're struggling. And so, this will be great if people come into the ER and they're having a lot of, health issues that might be giving them some thoughts of hurting themselves or ending their life. Then it's kind of like, okay, so here's where you can go for physical health problems, here's where you can go for some mental health problems, and Cecilia's going to help guide them through that process.
And since it's so community spread, no matter where they end up starting, whether they went to their primary, whether they ended up in the hospital, wherever they go, there can be a place to go from there.
Right. Yeah, and being that so my position is kind of that safety net. So sometimes providers might be afraid to ask the question of, are you having suicidal thoughts, because they don't know what to do after that.
Yes.
So this position, my position, and me, I will be able to, I'm that place that they can send these people so that we can get them the help that they need and those proper avenues. Exactly.
And I think something important to note, we spoke about this before we started filming, was that there were not many of these grants awarded nationwide. There was only a handful of them. And obviously we said that speaks to the volume of the issues we're facing locally, but also to how fortunate we are to get these resources. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say one more thing about the grant. Our hope is, because grants end eventually, and this is a 3-year grant, we'll be working actively the first and second year to be implementing into the community and get it going. We're hoping by the 3rd year we'll be putting some processes in place for some sustainability within the physician's offices and within the hospital, so that they won't need necessarily Cacilia to help link, but they'll already have some good ways that they've developed in their own internal offices for continuing this service on.
Once a provider has something in place, then when new staff comes in or additional providers, they can kind of share that knowledge. Everything's kind of already in place and it can just grow from there.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you ladies joining us, and if people want to learn more or speak with you directly, how would they get in touch with you?
So they can always call the office at 637-7200 or email me directly. It's cjensen, Jensen, at fourcorners.ws.
Great. Well, thank you ladies so much for joining us and taking a few minutes to explain this. Sounds like a great thing for our community. Hopefully be very beneficial in the years to come.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Stick around. We'll be back in a few minutes with more from Inside Eastern Utah.